Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Green Lanterns Podcast. I'm your host, as always, Will Smith of Sector 2814. And tonight, my job is to bring to you my coverage of Green Lantern 25. Just in thinking about from where we've came, I think this run started in 2023 and it is still going today, which is pretty awesome as a Green Lantern fan. This has not been the case for a lot of the Green Lantern projects that have come out alongside this one. We had this one start, and then we also had around the same time, we had Green Lantern War Journal, which was a story that followed John Stewart, and that run is over. We had Alan Scott, The Green Lantern, and that one is already over after 6 issues, which to date, for a complete start to finish run, I do believe that Alan Scott, The Green Lantern, is my favorite overall Green Lantern story of the past few years. We have also had, currently going on, Green Lantern Dark, but I think there's only 2 more issues left in that run. And then we do have one more ongoing, which is Absolute Green Lantern, which follows Joe. Then you have like Hal, John. They're the secondary characters in the story where Joe is supposed to be the main one. Issue 25 of Green Lantern is sort of a crossover story. This one was a little bit larger, and it involves things that happen both in here and in Green Lantern Corps itself. You're supposed to be reading both of the runs together to get the most out of this issue. And when this issue ends, the next part of the story will take place in Green Lantern Corps number 7 coming out here soon. As you can see here on the cover, it says the Starbreakers supremacy begins. It's letting you know the Starbreakers by the end of this are going to get the upper hand. The cover art is really sick. I love all the different colors and everybody kind of battling back and forth. And anytime you show me a decent amount of Kyle and he's sort of towards the front, it's going to score extra points for me. Our story kicks off where we see the Guardians. And the reason that I'm showing this one first, besides it being the first panel that we see of this story, is just it's the art. It's the rainbow effect of colors that you see behind them. It also just reminds people that the Guardians haven't really been involved too much in this. They are sort of like backup characters. They're here just to advise the Green Lantern Corps on what they think they should be doing, but they're no longer the bosses. We have Jessica Cruz running the Green Lantern Corps itself. But here, they're just having a conversation about basically it's too late for them really to do anything, and the only thing that they really can do at this point is just hope. Hope that the Green Lantern Corps is able to put together the batteries and restore the emotional spectrum before the Starbreakers do something to, maybe make this a permanent fractured spectrum, or for them to take power over everybody else. Not all of the cores are represented here, but it's a good chunk of them. And again, you have Blue is sort of front and center in the middle. Hope is my favorite of all of the Lantern cores. So it's just a beautiful shot that gets us into the story here. The other bit of story that takes place right after this is a plot line that I haven't been too fond of, and it's this Keli and Ellie plot where one of them has like a block going on in their brain that they do not want anybody else to access. And Ellie is sitting cross-legged in front of the door. And while she's sitting there, she's talking about trying to get into the door and being able to fully access Kelly's mind. This has kind of been going on for a couple issues here, but at this point, Ellie goes to reach to the door and she does get knocked back. It's almost like a pulse of energy or electricity comes and strikes her and knocks her back. And before she can make another attempt at getting back in the door, she has Keli talking to her saying, Oa to Ellie, come in, basically trying to wake her up. And then they're kind of going back and forth over what their actual job is supposed to be doing. But later on in the issue, she will try to get back in there until ultimately, at the end of the issue, she will suffer, or they will suffer, the same fate as sort of everybody else, and we'll get to that. One of the other threads throughout this comic run has been this adventure that Kyle, Connor, and crew have been going on throughout space. It's sort of like the backup story, but it's part of this main run, but it's like the backup story to what Hal's got going on. And in this, the entire time that we have seen the Interceptor from Green Lantern, the animated series, being flown at any point in this comic run, many a Green Lantern content creator and podcaster has complained openly about the direction in which the ship has been flying. Very clearly, it's being flown backwards the entire time. And finally, with Aya back from Green Lantern, the animated series, we had not seen her in forever, but here she is back in this run. You know, we discovered that at the end of the last issue. She is like the AI of the ship. So while we have our main group chit-chatting about talking to her, she introduces herself and says, "My name is Aya. I've been trying to return to my ship for a long time. Thank you for setting me free." And then she says, "Query, why have you been flying the Interceptor backwards?" And at that point, it was like this giant sigh of relief from not just me, but like I said, the other content creators. As soon as I read this panel, I was texting Ralph from Lanterns Live and asking him, "Have you read the new comic yet?" Because I knew that it was something that he would be happy about. You know, now that it's being addressed, it can be fixed. I don't know if it was always their intent to fly it backwards and have her be the one who comes in to course correct and sort of save us on the outside from this continuing, or if they've just been privy and alert online that they've been reading all of the feedback, because I see every time the Interceptor is shown in one of these comics, if you go to X or really any social page, people have been commenting on it. So I don't know when it was that they decided to fix it. I'm just happy that going forward, it should be fixed. But upon meeting her, they have this conversation. She asks them why they're flying it backwards, and then it sort of ends this part of the conversation with the fact that they can tell that she is in love. At the mention of Razor, her head sort of goes down and she almost looks sad. But I'm sure she's also excited, you know, hoping that after all this time, he'll still be there and they can still have the same relationship that they had many, many, many years ago. But not 100% sure yet. Switching off from Kyle and co. and going back to Hal, Carol, John, and Guy, they sort of have this meetup. Carol comes flying in and she gives Hal a big hug. Guy makes a remark that looking at them, it makes him feel like his life is empty because he should be, you know, looking for more in terms of love. And Carol says to him, "What's taking you this long?" And they have this cute little moment. But then they get down to the brass tacks, which is while all this is going on, and the Green Lantern Corps is trying to reproduce everybody and fix everybody's batteries so they can get the emotional spectrum back under control. For some reason, when it comes to Carol and the Star Sapphires, things are different. On the other side, you have Guy asking them, "Where's the love lantern?" And Carol says, "We don't want to risk building it. For some reason, I've been operating fine without a power battery," which either means there's another one out there or something else. Building it could destabilize what we're trying to put into order. So, yes, we've known for some time that anybody who has an extreme emotional reaction, they can tap into whatever that spectrum is, at least for a short period of time. But Carol, this whole comic run, has been able to be Star Sapphire. And early on in the comic run, she and Hal had that moment that's very tropey, where the two of them get together, and you would expect her to be like, you know, "Don't leave me." And Hal's like, "Sorry, babe, I gotta run off and do my own thing because I'm a hero." And in this story that Jeremy Adams has been telling, it's kind of been the opposite almost the whole time. You have Carol being the one to leave, who's like, "I want to go partner with the Justice League folks, and I want to learn how to be a proper hero." And Carol, as Star Sapphire, has already had a handful of heroic moments throughout. Like, things have been building for her where she seems to be getting a bigger and bigger role. And what I've really liked about it is that Jeremy Adams has put her in situations for her to sort of shine and not just be in situations where a lot of people look at Star Sapphire like, yes, it's Star Sapphire, but mostly it's Hal's girlfriend, or, you know, she's like a piece of Hal's story instead of being able to just be her own character that stands on her own. And it's just cool to see the progression that he's made and the strides that he's made into building her up so far in this story. So yeah, they're just sort of setting the tone here that regardless of what's going on, she doesn't need the battery because maybe there's another battery out there somewhere that's powering her, or somehow she's pulling this power from somewhere else, not 100% sure just yet. To answer John's question about how they're going to power up these batteries, one of the things that they need to do is go and get these special crystals that are basically like power amplifiers. If they're around something where you channel through them, it's significantly more power than doing it by yourself. And the whole group, or this whole group of the main characters, like Guy, Carol, and Hal, they go off, they land on this planet, they're going to find this cave, and inside this cave is like a giant star sapphire type or crystal type of purple dragon. It looks amazing. I almost wish Kyle was around to see this because he's much more of like the anime dragon type creative Green Lantern character when you think about like big things like this. But it's awesome for them to be thrown into this type of situation. While they're fighting this dragon, all of a sudden you have the Starbreaker team show up. And they introduce a new Lantern Corps, a new Fractured Spectrum Lantern Corps that we had not seen before, which is Jealousy. And Jealousy starts causing some infighting between the hero group. Notably, it's Amethyst and Carol. Now, Amethyst thinks that for some reason that Carol is super jealous of her, but you know, we don't know if she's flip-flopping, but it's really just because the Jealousy emotional spectrum lantern has shown up and she's, you know, infecting that power of hers. But it's not just her, and it's not just the Starbreaker who shows up. Nate shows up as well, and when Nate shows up, he starts battling Guy, and Guy really wants a piece of him too. This group, they also want these amplifying crystals as well for their own. Ultimately, whoever wins this battle, they should be able to power on their lantern. The Starbreakers can power theirs on, or the Green Lantern Corps can power everybody else's, is sort of like what they're trying to get to. During this awesome back and forth battle that they're having, where, Guy is fighting Nate at the start, Carol is trying to fend off Amethyst. This big dragon is in the background. The Starbreakers are here. Carol also sees Nate. But one cool thing is that when Carol gets a chance to showcase some of the constructs she can make, we always associate Hal as the person who's going to do fighter jets and planes and any sort of aircraft. But Carol should be in that mix too, because she's Carol Ferris, a Ferris Air. So she's been around the airline and airplane industry basically her whole life. She's been a high up executive at the company before. So she makes her own jet to use, which was just awesome to see on the page. Unfortunately for our heroes, by the end of this fight, it is clear that Nate gets away. After Nate gets away, we're not sure if he has the crystals or not. Hal is like a little bit beaten up and he's standing there. And it's, again, the opposite of what we normally come to expect. It's Carol flying in to catch up with Hal and ask Hal if he's okay. When they have their conversation, he's just like, please tell me you got the crystals. And she says, good news and bad news. I've got one, which means Nate and the Starbreakers have two. I think somebody asks, it might have been Kilowog, is one going to be enough for us? And they say it's going to have to be. Our heroes get back to Oa and they gather everybody around and they are going to make this attempt to power up the battery. And again, if you remember earlier, John was asking, how can we do it? And at the same time, it was Hal saying, I'll tell you. But when we get here, Hal's, where's Kyle? Kyle's supposed to be here. And I just love the way that this page is set up. Now, I'm not showing the whole thing on screen here, but in the background, you see all of the batteries back as we did in one of the very first pages of the comic book. I'm going to start on the right side of the story first and then get to the left. But after Kyle shows up, it's clear that Kyle is going to be the one that powers up all the batteries. I think he has one of the crystals in his hand, and then he has this amazing anime-style Super Saiyan moment where he goes from being a Green Lantern to a White Lantern, which is how a lot of Kyle fans love Kyle to be. Kyle did explain earlier in this run that the reason he's not always a White Lantern is because with the Fractured Spectrum being as bad as it is, he often has to use all of his willpower to keep all the other emotions in check. But here's a situation where they definitely need somebody who can tap into a higher power, and that's where Kyle gets to have his shine, and you can see it on the right. Again, you have these beautiful colors where he's like almost there after kind of cracking his knuckles along with the crystals. And then he says, okay, let's light this candle, which is silly, but honestly, it's also really, really cold. On the flip side, if you go to the left part of the page, we get to have this really awesome, nostalgic, but lovely, heart-touching moment for fans who got to watch Green Lantern the animated series. If you haven't seen Green Lantern the animated series, you can tell just from the writing that Aya and Razor are a group of characters in the Green Lantern mythos who have been separated for a long period of time, have been trying to get back to each other, but have not seen each other in a very, very long time. And it was clear from earlier pages that Aya, at least in this run, is still in love with Razor. Now, for those of us who watched the animated series and also some things that came after that, it's very clear Razor has also always loved Aya, and he's been on the hunt for her ever since the animated series has ended. This is the first time Kilowog is actually the one who looks up, sees Aya, and he says, no way. And that's when Razor's like, Kilowog? And he turns his head to see what is Kilowog looking at, and he gets to see his beloved Aya for the first time. The person, the entity that he has been searching for forever, and now she is in front of him and so close to him. We just have this beautiful moment where everything feels like it's gone very, very well. It could be a happy ending to the comic. And then on the next page, as Razor is about to tell Aya that he loves her, the Starbreakers and their core use their crystals to power up their battery, and basically all the color kind of goes out of the universe. After that happens, you get to this being the last panel of the current comic, Green Lantern 25, and this is where it leaves us at. It looks like color has been drained from basically everything except for Aya still being pretty green. Everybody else's green is much more dull. If they had red on, it's much more dull. You can see it on screen here. Of note, when you look around, you can see Kyle kind of dead center behind Razor and Aya. He's still a White Lantern. You have all these other characters trying to recover from this kind of boom. We had Keli and Ellie get separated. We had Razor and Aya get separated. But the one character that you don't see, that you know is around, at least in this bottom panel here, is Carol Ferris, a.k.a. Star Sapphire, is not in this bottom panel. When they read the next, the Starbreakers supremacy continues in Green Lantern Corps number 7, another crossover issue. No emotions detected. And then at the bottom, it has like a log line of a ring, 2 robots, and a wall. Oh my. Lantern fans probably look at the wall part and identify that immediately as they're going to the source wall. And if you're not familiar with it, I think people will be pretty stoked to learn more about the source wall, ideally, in Green Lantern Corps number 7. The 2 robots part, when I was on Lanterns Live, they were going over what else could these robots be. Aya, being one of the 2 robots, makes complete sense because her green is still there. So she doesn't seem bound to the same rules as everybody else. So that's one of the 2. When you factor in there has to be at least one more robot, the other bit of context clues that they looked at here was the no emotions detected, which makes it sound very, very Manhunter-ish. So maybe we're getting Aya having to partner with a Manhunter going to the source wall, and then a ring, implying that there's only one ring. If Carol was not a part of this boom, and Carol has been built up basically since issue 2 or 3 to be a hero now, a Star Sapphire on her own who doesn't need to be babysat by Hal or any of the other heroes. It feels like this issue was like the final touches in setting her up. She does her own constructs. She has her emotions in check. She can access her powers without needing a central battery back on Oa. So maybe like Aya, she's going to be the one ring in this scenario in this next issue and kind of lead the charge and get to be one of the main characters of the issue where nobody else has full access to their powers going forward, but she can, and Aya can, and maybe Manhunter can. They're going to the source wall to try to help figure out how to solve all of these issues and set things right again. But it does feel as of right now, just from reading this issue and knowing everything we do from the first 24 issues, plus the Green Lantern Corps stuff, it definitely feels like finally Sapphire is getting a true spotlight on her character. Carol Ferris is getting her chance to shine in this comic run, and I am super excited and cannot wait for Green Lantern Corps #7 to drop so we can continue this story. That's it for me. In the grand scheme of things, I absolutely love this issue. I continue to love most of this run that has happened. Jeremy Adams continues to knock it out of the park, and I think a lot of the art and the coloring has been phenomenal as well. It's a really fun time right now in the fandom to be a Green Lantern fan and to be able to talk about this stuff with fellow nerds. Things seem to be trending upwards in a big way for Green Lantern, not just because of the comics being really good. Between this and Absolute Green Lantern being ongoings, Green Lantern Dark still has a couple more issues to go. We just had Guy Gardner in the Superman movie, or as I like to call it, Green Lantern 2025 featuring Superman. We're also going to be seeing Guy Gardner at least in one episode of Peacemaker Season 2 coming out soon. And then from there, we know that we will have multiple Lanterns in the Lantern Show coming out on HBO, which has wrapped filming and should be out early 2026, according to HBO and WB themselves. Things are looking great. I hope you guys enjoyed the comic run, and hopefully you got something out of watching this video that maybe you weren't thinking about or seeing earlier. If you think Carol is or isn't getting her time to shine, let me know in the comments below. I always love to see what other people's takes are on the comings and goings of all things Green Lantern. Until the next time, I'll catch you guys on the next one.